if you ask someone on the street, do you understand the World Trade Organization? Do you know what it stands for? And do you know how it functions? And you get 99% of the people saying, I have no idea. The private sector might be a little more advanced than that, but there's still many, as we recently experienced with Brexit, many small or medium-sized companies, they don't know. They don't know the rules of the game. They don't know how to get their issue out there. That's what we try to facilitate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially for the SMEs that are growing up across the board, across the world, as entrepreneurship takes hold in many different parts of the world where maybe before, for different reasons, capital restrictions may have been put into place, or just the skill sets necessary to develop specific type of businesses weren't there. As the world becomes more informationally globalized, maybe not so in terms of trade, informationally globalized, more people are now developing different types of businesses. To get them involved in the conversation is key. Also, I can imagine the work you do there, it probably takes a little bit more effort because the niches of types of businesses and the actual businesses on offer and the products and services on offer are changing. As technology changes, the business offering and the service offering needs to adapt with the complexness of society. How do you guys reach out to the SMEs through your government representatives? Is it still difficult to find different ways in because some parts of the world SMEs are more developed, whereas others are less developed or less transparent? Or what kinds of things do you guys face in that situation? Especially when you guys speak to maybe other kinds of organizations, maybe with the UN or with the EU or other kind of regional political bodies like this. Can you say something about that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we are a relatively small international organization. We're only based in Geneva, Switzerland. We have about 650 people. So for us to reach out to anybody, outside of the sort of 40 kilometers around Geneva is a challenge. And of course, modern tools make it easier. But generally speaking, what we first and foremost do is, as you say, is work with others who are better plugged in, whether it's business associations, other international organizations, governments, anyone who can help us to reach out, to offer our, I would say our information, our knowledge. We use those sources. And overall, they help us a lot. Once these contacts are established, you sometimes go deeper because there might be a specific issue related to a specific sector within the area of micro, small, and medium enterprises. And then, you may have 4 or 5 smaller firms that you're already working with. They can help you.
Yeah.
I mean, what we generally say is, if you have suggestions, if I would come to you and say, listen, do you have suggestions of companies that we should talk to in this particular sector that are not, the big ones, that are not the multinationals? You may give us 5 or 10 or 20 names, and we reach out to these people. That's how we built that network. And we had to really start from scratch, because I don't know how you think about this, but I have always found it amazing that for 15, 20 years or longer that I work in this international environment, both for governments, for the European Commission, for WTO, that MSMEs, or small and medium, have always been taken for granted. And then suddenly you saw a change in attitude, a change in analysis, a change in resource, and everybody started saying, well, they are responsible for about 90% of our employment,
exactly,
or 90% of our economic activity. And, friend and foe looked at everybody like, why didn't we know this?
Yeah.
And why didn't we realize ourselves this was so important? So it's a key area to reach out to. A big company doesn't necessarily need our help or support or explanations. They have lawyers, they have experts, they have public affairs people. They concentrate on these matters whenever they need it. They prepare themselves. But the smaller ones, they really need us. And it's almost like we're calling out. If you're out there,
sure,
I'm very easy to reach. We are very easy to approach. We have numbers, we have emails. And it goes like that, Klisman. You're laughing. It goes like that. There are people asking you questions literally about a particular product they produce. How do we get this into another market? Or why is this being blocked? Or why is it not working? It's at that level.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think you're right in saying that the way that we see it also, Bernard, is that, as you mentioned, the bigger firms have more experience in dealing with the big international organizations. They have the manpower behind them to have solicitors, to have lawyers, to have representatives, to have specialist trade companies that they bring on board to negotiate with you guys. And also the big banks, the trade finance organization like the International Trade and Forfeiting Association, for example, have people on their teams who can then reach out to the WTO or have direct connections with you guys or direct connections with the countries themselves or the regions themselves. Whereas the small company who's producing maybe textiles, for example, they don't have the people on board to reach out. They may not know how far up they can go, but if you have someone who has initiative, who maybe has tenacity, at least now they know from listening to this that it is perhaps a lot easier to reach out to you than they thought possible before. Because I know from experience and speaking to these companies, they really rely on their national governments to do the reach out for them, or they have associations that they're part of, which then voice their concerns to them, only because it's more streamlined and it's a lot easier. So then for you guys, connecting with these trade associations or these industry bodies would be very interesting. For example, I know for a fact, because I've been contacted about it, Kazakhstan and Egypt are hosting sort of an investment forum in February in Sharm el-Sheikh, because they want to increase investment to both parts of the regions. And these things are happening on a macro country level, but the small SMEs are the backbone of industry. As Napoleon said, the UK is a nation full of shopkeepers. That sort of still remains true, and it's become more sophisticated. Although he may have meant that as an insult, it's very true in the fact that small businesses, medium-sized enterprises, when you say medium, they're actually very, very big compared to the big conglomerates. They still have a big role to play.
If you'd like to hear this interview in its entirety, then head on over to SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other major podcast platform and search Four Corners Podcast.